Good morning, Grindstone family. Today is our fifth stop on the road to Calvary online devotional series that we've been doing. If you're a little bit confused about the numbers, that's okay. When we did Palm Sunday this past Sunday, it actually winds up being the seventh stop on the road to Calvary. And right now I'm doing the fifth. And the way that it's going to work is that when you go back to our YouTube channel, you'll see the order of everything that's completely laid out. We're just getting 13 days of content together so that when we have Monday of this week, everything's landing completely in sync with the lead up to Easter Sunday. So today we're looking at a story that Jesus used to teach people a lesson about his mission of why he came into this world. Now at this point that we're at in Matthew's gospel today, we're going to be in Matthew chapter 21. We're looking at a point in Jesus' life where he's healed a lot of people. He's helped a lot of people. He's given sight to the blind. He's healed many people that had diseases that they'd been carrying with them for an entire lifetime. So he had all these people who were really excited, who were really thankful for who he was. But what we also have in the story is that there was also a lot of people who were not excited about who Jesus was. A lot of people view Jesus as a threat. He was a threat to their perceived authority. And because of this, some of the people who were listening to him were planning to find a way to kill him. And Jesus knew this. He was very much aware of the main purpose of his life. And he actually told that to his disciples several times. He said, the main reason why I've come is to die, is to deal with your sin problem. And in order for people to understand this, what Jesus did was he used the device of the parable of the story to communicate how he understood completely everything that was going on. And that all this tension that was going to be coming into his life, it culminated into the cross itself. So let's pick up this story. It's in Matthew chapter 21, verses 33 to 46. This is from the New Living Translation. It says this. Now listen to another story. A certain landowner planted a vineyard, built a wall around it, dug a pit for pressing out the grape juice, and built a lookout tower. Then he leased the vineyard to tenant farmers and moved to another country. At the time of the grape harvest, he sent his servants to collect his share of the crop. But the farmers grabbed his servants, beat one, killed one, and stoned another. So the landowner sent a larger group of his servants to collect for him, but the results were the same. Finally, the owner sent his son, thinking, surely they will respect my son. But when the tenant farmers saw his son coming, they said to one another, here comes the heir to this estate. Come on, let's kill him and get the estate for ourselves. So they grabbed him, dragged him out of the vineyard, and murdered him. When the owner of the vineyard returns, Jesus asked, what do you think he will do to these farmers? And the religious leaders replied, he will put the wicked men to a horrible death and lease the vineyard to others who will give him his share of the crop after each harvest. Then Jesus asked them, didn't you ever read this in the scriptures? The stone that the builders rejected has now become the cornerstone. This is the Lord's doing, and it is wonderful to see. And he concluded by saying this, I tell you, the kingdom of God will be taken away from you and given to a nation that will produce the proper fruit. Anyone who stumbles over that stone will be broken to pieces, and it will crush anyone it falls on. When the leading priests and Pharisees heard this parable, they realized he was telling the story against them. They were the wicked farmers. They wanted to arrest him, but they were afraid of the crowds who considered Jesus to be a prophet. You know, when you read the story, Jesus is telling this story to communicate to the crowd, to communicate to the people around him, that he knows exactly what's going on, and he fully anticipates the responses the people are having to him. It's quite an intense moment if you think about it. I mean, Jesus knows that some of his listeners want him killed. And he tells a story about a son being murdered by people just like them. These were the people who did not like him. These were the people who did not want him around. They didn't want him alive. And yet we see that Jesus is himself not just willing to tolerate people who oppose him, he's willing to die for people who are his enemies. Our memory verse today reminds us of Jesus' willingness to die for his enemies, to die for people who oppose him, to die for every single one of us, even when we were in disagreement, even when we ourselves in our own hearts were in opposition to him. Romans 5:8 says, "But God showed his great love for us by sending Christ to die for us while we were still sinners." You know, today we're selective about who we allow ourselves to have relationships with. You know, we say if somebody wrongs us, or if somebody harms us, or if somebody even disagrees with us, we cut that person immediately out of our lives. You know, you can find bestsellers on every kind of book list of giving you relationship advice, and they're all telling you the same thing. They'll say, you know, if there's somebody who disagrees with you, if there's somebody who you don't like, if there's somebody who you view as toxic because they don't see things the same way you do, you need to cut that person out of your life, and everything in your life will be better. Well, thankfully, that's not the way God works. When Jesus is hated, when he is scorned, when he is ridiculed, when he is persecuted, he doesn't retaliate. In fact, he does the opposite. Jesus instead dies for people who oppose him. And you think, the gospel is good news. Well, why is this such good news? Because each of us, in our own way, we've lived or thought or acted in ways in which we've opposed Jesus as our King. And instead of cutting us off, instead of having nothing to do with us, instead of casting us out, he dies for us, pays for our sin, pays for the sins of everybody who's been in opposition to him. You know, to symbolize this, our activity today is this small circle that's a picture of a bunch of grapes. This reminds us of the vineyard where the farmers plotted to kill the landowner's son. And the drop of blood reminds us that Jesus bled and died for us. And the song that we're looking at this week, the song that's attached to this video, that's a link there that's in the comments, is one that's been around for many generations, that's helped people to think deeply, to contemplate about exactly what Jesus did for us by walking to the cross for us. And that's the hymn, that's the song, "When I Survey the Wondrous Cross." And there's a beautiful version of it that's sung by Catherine Scott. And it's helped us for generations now as believers to really consider the cost of Jesus being willing to go to the cross for us. So this week, I know we're on the start of this week leading up to Easter, but I really pray that you take a moment at some point this week to consider the cost of your new life, to consider the cost of your forgiveness, of your forgiven sin, and to consider the willingness that Jesus had to go to the cross for you, even when you were in opposition to Jesus at some point as well too. So as we look ahead to Easter Sunday, let's keep this in mind and keep our hearts, keep our minds fully engaged as we take one step closer to Easter this coming week.